Hi, welcome to Rajal Night. Today I'm going to discuss about the requirements management. As we all know, being a business analyst, understanding the requirements of any of the customer and providing solutions subsequently is what generally being a BA we will be doing. So as a part of the roles and responsibilities of a business analyst, irrespective of technology and the domain, because whichever the technology RV belongs to, at the same time, whichever the technology or functionality our project belongs to, irrespective of that, understanding the requirements, managing the requirements is all something essentially important. So if you want to manage your requirements, so this is a process where we need to trace the requirements, prioritize the requirements, managing the requirements. All these things are essentially required for any BA role. So once we have understood the business problem of the customer, based on the identification of the scope what we have studied so far, it is always important for us what kind of project are we working on, because usually there are two kind of projects. One is some projects were building right from the scratch. There was requirement was given by the customer right from the beginning. We have to start the project, or else some projects you may require some customization to be made to the existing ones. This is one category. Second category, projects where you are migration, right? So because data migration is one of the key elements nowadays, because most of the organization wants to transform from legacy application to the new application. This is where generally data migration projects, most of that. Right? So even nowadays in the industry, we see most of the projects even in data migration also. So there are two different type of projects. Depends on the client requirement, depends on the client needs, all that. This will be valid. So people who are applying for a business analyst role and people who are learning for business analyst, or people who are already having, who are already working as a business analyst, need to understand how requirement functions and works. So this video is majorly used on that. So if you see this is a diagram which I'll be showing you, where initially we starts with requirement management. So when you want to understand the requirements first, these requirements we will be classified into different things. One is about requirement management and planning. Second will be called as requirements development. Third will be called as requirement verification, followed by requirements change management. When we talk about requirement management planning, right? So this is the first thing which we need to talk about, requirement management planning, where here we need to have a planning for developing the requirements. So this is something more or less connecting with project planning, because whatever the project we are developing depends on the size, depends on the complexity, timelines, expertise, etc. We have to develop project planning, right? So how much manpower we require, at the same time what is the duration we have, what kind of application development model or a methodology are we following, whether you're going for traditional practices of application development, something like waterfall, all that, or else are we uh, considering are we considering agile process, right? So this is all something, right? So what kind of methodology, all this. So project management planning, project planning is something essentially required. As a part of project planning and all, this requirement management is what generally will be done by a project manager, right? So this is where generally project manager responsibilities majorly lies upon. This is the first one. Requirement management planning, where project manager will be involved. So that part of project management and all, what kind of requirements. Again, these requirements we can classify into different parts. Usually requirements will be. So requirements will be classified as different aspects, I can say. Let me write down here. On a high level note, requirements are two types. One is high level requirements and second was low level requirements. Right? So these are the two different type of requirements, high level requirements followed by low level requirements. Again, when you talk about the classification of requirements, so these are as follows. The first one is about business requirements, which majorly focusing on the business aspects, business goal, vision, mission, etc. All that. This is all comes under the business requirements point of view. Second, end user or stakeholder requirements means what stakeholders is expecting or what end user is expecting. This is all something comes under end user or stakeholder requirements. The third one is called transitional requirements. State of transition from an existing system to a new application, especially as I told you, when we are migrating projects, right? So when there is a data migration has been taken place, wherein you are migrating from existing system to the new system, right? So this is what we call it as transitional transfer. So transitional requirements is also one of the key element which we need to see, right? So this is what we talk about transitional requirements, where you are transitioning from existing to proposed, wherein by doing that we do some gap analysis, etc., all these here. Next, solution requirements means whatever the features, functional, non-functional requirements we have identified to develop, those are all comes under solution requirements. Last but not least is called regulatory requirements. Regulatory requirements means what kind of compliance standards, policies and procedures we have to follow. All these things comes under regulatory requirements. So this is the first thing which normally we see whenever we are talking about project management planning. Whenever we want to know about requirements and all everything, this is what generally it will be of useful for, right? So when you're talking about requirement management planning, as far as the project manager, we need to know about the classification of requirements. Prior to that, what are high level and low level requirements should be known. So once it is done, the next thing will be about requirement development. This is the second one, right? So you can see over here, requirements development will be. Normally, this requirement development will be taken care of by the business analyst role, right? So whatever the role being a BA are we playing on, but nowadays, earlier we used to have systems analyst as separate, but nowadays business systems analyst, some organization we are calling as, some organizations called as business analyst, some people called business process analyst, people who wants to have a knowledge over the business process, and different varieties. But business systems analyst, on a simple note, I can say whatever the requirements were identified as far as this solution requirements itself is concerned, right? As I told you, like features, functional, non-functional, those requirements will be developed here by the BA. This is where. So for that, there are different documentations you may be required to prepare in coming days, like business requirements documents, functional and non-functional. Prior to that, you may be required to prepare some vision document, scope document, right? So these are all something essentially needed when we are working on the requirements development. What kind of documents being a BA we have to prepare? I made a separate video. I think in my channel it was there earlier. I have prepared it. I'll put a link in this description box. I'll give a link for that so that you can have a knowledge over the detailed part of there itself. This is the second thing. Third, about requirements verification. This is where generally testing team will come into picture. That's the reason why testing team will perform two things. One is manual testing and second is automation testing, right? So two different testings will be there, manual and automation. In this manual testing, they have to prepare some test scenarios, right? Test cases, right? So test scripts, all these things will be prepared by the testing team. So this is where generally these verifications and all everything come into picture. These verifications and all come into picture on this regard. So manual testing is the first thing, because whatever the requirements was taken by the development team to accept, to work with. So whether as per the customer requirement, is it was there or not. So that requirements verification has to be done by the testing team. This is where generally it happens here. But before requirements verification, whenever we are talking about requirement development as a part of business analyst, to do that, generally they have to conduct JAD sessions also, because here you can see in reference to the joint application and development sessions, using some JAD sessions, at the same time conducting some interviews, some preparing some questionnaire, right? So etc. Right? So these are all the different techniques which normally business analyst people will follow as a part of requirements development and all. These requirement gathering and illustration techniques like JAT sessions and all everything will be followed. Subsequently, that they will be discussing with the development team also, because development team will be there. So they have to discuss with the development team as well as architect team and all, so that they have to develop some architectures over that. At the same time, of course, requirements definitions, wherein we will be collecting this from the product owner, project manager. This is all happens. After that, this verification will be taken place. So whenever this verification is taken place, as I told you, manual testing and all, wherein test scripts, test cases, right? So test plans, all these things will be prepared by the testing team here. Finally, the requirement chain management will be taken place. So before you are going to chain management, so being a business analyst, we have to understand the context of requirement analysis, right? So requirement analysis means how requirements were working on, right? So nature of the requirements, that sort of understanding, clearly one being a business analyst, we need to have. So based on that, of course, verifications will be taken place subsequently. After that, requirement chain management will come into picture. In this requirements change management, if there is any kind of changes to be made to the existing requirements and all everything. So with the consent of the test management team, product owner team, business analyst, systems analyst, development team, user interface designers, and all that, requirement change management will come into picture. This is how on a high level note, which requirements will be managed for any of the projects, irrespective of technology, irrespective of the domain. Requirements change management will be more or less like this. The first one is about requirement management planning, where project manager will be involved in it, as I told you. This is the first one. Second, requirements development. In this requirement development, mostly BAs, being a BA, we do that. So for that, generally, we need to do the requirement gathering by conducting the JAD sessions, all that. We need to know about the definition of requirement analysis, all that. Next, requirements verification will be done by the testing team, because they have to ensure whether whatever the requirements taken by us, what must be the final output. So for that, manual testing, etc. will be done, followed by this automation testing we do. That is the next level. Next, about requirement change management, where how to change the requirements, means if there is any kind of requirements and all that. So there are some change management plan, change documents, all this will come. Change management plan, right? So change document. Next, change order request, etc. Right? So all these things are comes under requirement chain management, etc., etc. This is what and how usually this business analyst role in reference to the requirement management and all everything is all about for any of the projects. So this is nothing to do with anything, right? So any technology or domain or something. But end of the day, role of a business analyst in reference to the requirements management will be this. So I hope you got an idea, right? I think this is majorly useful for people who are business analyst aspirants, either people who are working or people who may be applying for job opportunities, all that. This is all about this video. If you have any questions and if you have any queries, followed by any training and coaching needs, please reach out for my contact details, so that which I am posting in my below to this video. Thank you.